I hope you're still here. I hope you're still excited about Rebecca Parsons' session. Rebecca Parsons is Chief Technology Officer of ThoughtWorks and a very well-known expert throughout the industry. We're very happy to have her here. Not just as member of our advisory board, but also as a speaker. Hi, Rebecca.
About the technical problems. It's amazing how that happens sometimes. And I'm here to talk about platforms, architecture, and sustainability, three words that actually are rather ambiguous. So I'm going to start with some definitions. A platform is a foundation that uses self-serve APIs, and the self-serve part is very important. This is one thing we've learned from the hyperscalers, how important it is to have self-serve APIs. But the other important part of this definition is the compelling internal product. That if we think about a platform as a product, it changes the way we think about and prioritize the kinds of services that we are providing on that platform. And I'll have more to say about that later. As I said, platforms is pretty ambiguous as a term. SAP and ServiceNow and Salesforce, they'll talk about themselves as a platform, and there's a sense in which that is true. The difference is you as a consumer of the platform have no ability really to influence the product direction. And then, of course, cloud platforms, they are operating at a different level, but they too are externally provided platforms. Sometimes when people talk about platforms, they just mean the platform business model, such as Uber and Lyft and Airbnb, where they're providing a mechanism for people to provide services. But the two kinds of platforms I want to focus on are the developer platform and the business capability platform. And the developer platform is about providing some of the foundational services, whether it be single sign-on, things having to do with logging, things having to do with security. There are lots of different more infrastructure type services that you might want to deliver on a developer platform. And then the business capability platform is built on top often of a developer platform. And this is where I think you really start to get the power of a platform in terms of being able to more rapidly develop products and services for use both internally within your partner ecosystem or for your end customers. And I personally feel one of the reasons that SOA went so horribly wrong is that we focused on drawing boundaries around systems and providing services on the basis of those systems rather than around business capabilities or business concepts or bounded contexts within a philosophy of domain-driven design. Because when we think about how people in our organization might want to combine the various pieces in their head of how our organization does business and makes money and interacts with our customers and interacts with our partners, if we have those boundaries drawn in that same way, we are more likely to be able to take those building blocks, those little Lego blocks of our business capabilities and build them into the requests that are coming from the other parts of our organization. And so it's crucial within the design of a business capability platform to really think carefully about where we draw those boundaries. And this is the same whether we're talking about a microservices architecture, using domain-driven design more broadly in a well-structured monolith. We want to make sure that we've got the right kind of boundaries so that we can expose capabilities in such a way that we can easily move them around to construct new products or services for our customers, both internal and external, and potentially our partners as well. So then what are the pillars of a platform strategy? The first is providing the basic delivery infrastructure. We want to make it as easy as possible to get things into production, from the idea into the code base and then delivered all the way into production. And so the first pillar of the platform strategy is trying to ensure that we have the proper delivery infrastructure to bring whatever new products and services we are delivering to the marketplace. Now, the realities for many people within enterprises is that our architectures really are not ready for this yet. We might not have the proper APIs in place, in particular to support the business capability platforms that we have. And so there's going to be a fair amount of remediation that has to take place around our architectures and our APIs to really get us into a position where we can accelerate delivery and we can bring new products and services to market. Now, self-service was mentioned in the definition of platforms. Self-service data in particular is very important. Over the years, our understanding of the value of an organization's data has simply increased. And one of the things that we've also learned is that the more context you have around the business capability or the business objective or the business insight that you are trying to derive from a set of data, the easier it is for you to draw those insights out of the data themselves. And so this ability for an analyst sitting in your supply chain operations to self-service access to the data that they need to potentially analyze changes in the supply chain due to a weather event or something like that. By having those requests come from the people who have the understanding of that area of the organization increases the speed with which we can get insights because we've got a much tighter feedback loop. Another critical part of a platform strategy is the infrastructure that allows us to experiment. And that's one of the things that we want to enable with platforms is the ability to try out new products and services, try out new approaches to a particular part of our business processes to see if we can make improvements. And we'll see how this is particularly important when we start talking about sustainability. In the early days of continuous delivery, we actually had conversations around the fact that perhaps we should change the definition of done from agile software development to it's not done when all the tests passed and it's signed off by the business owner, but it's done only when it's made it all the way into production and you have the experimental evidence that shows that the intent of that feature was actually achieved in production. Now, personally, I think that breaks the rapid feedback loop that a delivery team needs to be able to deliver software. But there is certainly something to the point that we don't just want to keep deploying things and not check to see whether we're achieving the results. I've often said to people that, if you added up all of the business cases that we've had over the years for all of the systems that we've deployed, you'd have an enormous savings in terms of headcount and increase in revenue and decrease in cost. But we often don't go back and measure it. And so building into your platform the ability not just to easily experiment, but also measure the impacts of those experiments allows us to put more of a focus on this hypothesis-driven development, where this is what I'm trying to achieve with this new product, with this change that I'm making, with this new service. And then we get to say, did we achieve it or not? And maybe that tells us we need to pivot. Maybe it means that we need to continue because we got really tremendous results, but we have to measure it in order to know that. And then customer touch point technology. Having a unified approach to your user interface makes it much easier to deliver new products and services, particularly to end customers or particularly to parts of your organization that maybe have rapid turnover or maybe specific needs around training. By using things like customer touchpoint platform technology, design systems, you can make it much easier for your users to onboard into new products and services by having that unified experience. And again, we'll see how that plays out from a sustainability perspective. But the real key for a platform is to reduce friction. We want to make it as easy as possible to roll out new functionality, to understand how it's working, whether it's achieving the objectives, roll back experiments that are not effective. And a lot here comes back to that last clause in the definition of a platform, which said it should be a compelling internal product. If you're truly following a product mindset with your platform, who are the users of that platform? It's the delivery teams. And so you want to be focused on, am I giving the delivery teams the things that they need to move as quickly and safely as possible in getting new features, new functionality out to their target user base? We often get asked, should we be mandating people to use our platform? And our approach, rather than mandating the use of the platform, is to incent the platform teams to really work with the delivery teams and understand, what do we have to do to make you want to use the platform? If using the platform is the easiest way to do the right thing, then you don't have to mandate to the organization that they use the platform. They're going to want to. And then you can have the right kinds of conversations around, okay, you don't feel like you can use the platform in this area. Is this something that we should actually build into the platform? Perhaps it's the introduction of a new technology into the organization. What role might that play for other delivery teams? But you want to be able to have the discussion. Why is it that you feel you can't use these platform services, so that as a platform product team, we can reduce that friction, reduce the barrier to using the platform, so it is the destination of choice for the delivery teams, as opposed to seeing something that is imposed upon them and causing them to slow down and deliver less frequently than they would like. So this platform as a product thinking is crucial to the success of a platform. Now, it took a long time just to define platforms. I'm not even going to begin to try to define architecture. But one of the things about architecture that I want to focus on here as being particularly relevant with respect to sustainability is that many of the architectural decisions that we are making are about behavioral characteristics we would like our systems to demonstrate, whether it be a certain level of performance or resiliency or recovery time. And possibilities are things like, what is the carbon footprint? How sustainable is our overall IT organization? And then finally, sustainability. And this is a very broad definition of sustainability: the preservation of resources to preserve life on Earth. But when we think about sustainability in that broad way, there are actually three pillars. There's environmental sustainability, which is mostly what we think about. But if we are, as an organization, truly embracing sustainability as an overall objective, economic sustainability, are we running a sustainable business? Overall, are we using resources in such a way that we can continue to feed our organization so that we can continue to be a viable organization? Or is there something about the way we are doing business that puts a limit on our sustainability as an economic entity? And then social sustainability. What is our relationship with the broader society around our organization? And do we have a sustainable relationship with the various stakeholder groups that are involved here? And so, first, I want to talk about how architecture and sustainability fit together, and then we'll bring platforms back into this again. And one of the questions I want you to think about is carbon a new resource constraint? Depending on how long you've been around in the technology industry, you might remember that there were times when we were limited by memory. One of the early systems I worked on, we were so thrilled when we got to go from 4K of memory to 8K of memory. Memory at that time was a very precious resource. Compute. It used to be that we would think about this trade-off between, should I store this in memory or should I recompute it? Which is the greater resource constraint? We don't worry about those things anymore. But is carbon a resource constraint that we should start to think about? Because just because we can do certain things doesn't mean we should. And I believe when we start thinking about our broader objectives with respect to our ecosystem and our IT assets, there might be things that we decide we don't want to do simply because of the carbon footprint. Some examples of the architectural implications are things like, where do we store data? How much data do we move? Where do we move it to and from? What are the communication patterns amongst the various aspects of our system? We very often, when we think about carbon, think about compute, but data and data movement and data storage is a big part of our carbon contribution as well. And another reality is there are still a lot of unknowns about measuring the carbon consumption of a particular piece of code. Intuitively, you would think if something runs longer, it uses more carbon, but that is not always true. But we are continuing to evolve strategies. The Green Software Foundation has a curriculum for software developers on green software engineering to introduce you to some techniques that you can use while you're developing software to make your software itself less carbon intensive. But that's really focusing on the sustainability for IT. How sustainable is my compute and IT asset estate? But I want to focus also on how we can use technology, how we can use IT to make our entire organization more sustainable. And a truly sustainable transformation is a holistic process. You're not just going to look at IT, you need to look at all aspects of your organization. And there are 4 different pillars, again, associated with how you take a technology-enabled approach to sustainability. And first, you have the foundation, and much of that has to do with, do you have the data available to you to understand what your position is and where you need to improve? The second is, how do we then use technology, not just to optimize our technology infrastructure, but our broader operations? The third is, there are organizational aspects to sustainability goals that are enabled by technology. But this isn't just a change to your systems, this is a change to how organizations work. And then there are market implications. Might there be new customer services that you're delivering? Maybe your customers have expectations for you to deliver more sustainable products. And I'm going to talk about each 4 of these pillars. So the first is the foundation. And as I said, The basis for this is measurement. What data do we have? And what do we have to do to get the data that we don't have? And then what are the goals that we want to set for our organization? How will we set those goals? How will we hold people accountable for achieving those goals? And how is this built into the overall accountability for all levels of the organization? Platforms play a crucial role here. One, the data platforms that will allow you to do the reporting and the tracking that's necessary as you're going through your sustainability transformation. But also these platforms can provide different utilities that allow you to potentially measure the impact of things that perhaps you couldn't measure before, so that not everybody has to figure out how to measure something. So part of this technology foundation is building into the platform things that will help you establish that baseline of data and track your progress. Just like we want to know that the service that we deliver to our customer is achieving our goals, we want to know the same thing about our sustainability objectives. And then the organization. How do we organize this for efficiency and sustainability? What is our overall strategy? And what technologies can we use to achieve these organizational goals? And to do this, we want to look at our organization quite broadly. Supply chains are actually a big part of the overall footprint of organizations. What is the sustainability impact of all of the people in your supply chain, all of the different suppliers that you have? And how can you use platforms to allow you to converge to common solutions to some of those more organizational issues? Another important technology support here is modeling and simulation, because many of these solutions are not obvious. We were working with one particular manufacturing organization, and they had a very clear idea of what they thought they had to do to their supply chain to make it greener. But it was going to be complex, it was going to be expensive, and really wasn't giving them the overall gains that they hoped for. And so we set up, a what if scenario generator for many different options for their supply chain, and found a relatively simple fix that was much less expensive and therefore regained its cost very quickly and had a much more significant impact on carbon. And it wasn't something that they had even considered. It was so far out of the realm of the things that they thought they would have to do. And so being able to use simulation, having the data there that you can run these models and understand really how does your organization really work, and then what are the impacts of some of these changes that you might make on your organization, on your teams, within your partner ecosystem, how you deliver your goods and services. Using simulation provides options that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And that's one of the really dangerous things that we so often hear. Oh, well, I never thought of that. Well, that's where using some of these tools of simulation, they can provide you those solutions. Of course, what is the sustainability strategy for your infrastructure? Are there engineering practices that have to change? Are there deployment patterns that have to change? So often when people think about their technology landscape, they focus on, I don't have to worry about this. I'm running in the cloud. My cloud provider will worry about sustainability for me. But it's much broader than that. Yes, you can get a big win if you move your cloud workload from a dirtier region to a cleaner region. But what about zombie processes? What about aspects of your architecture that are over provisioned in the cloud? What are some things that are running constantly that maybe don't need to run constantly? We need to think about all of those things and then embed those good practices into the platforms, because the more your delivery teams get these things just as part of the way they develop on the platform, the less you have to worry about any kind of overhead associated with sustainability. And it really is amazing how many people think that you can't really do sustainability within the context of an organization because it costs money. Very often it saves money. And then finally, what about the market? There are disciplines like green user experience design, which prod you to, for example, try to deliver capabilities into your user interface that allow your customers to understand the impacts on sustainability of their individual choices. But there are other ways that you can think about this with respect to the markets. Are there ways you can participate in the circular economy? Are there ways you can change your partner ecosystem to become more sustainable? And again, in particular, the business capability platforms have a role to play here, both in terms of how you are providing that user interface to your customers, the kinds of options you are presenting to them, the kind of information you're presenting to them, as well as how you can participate with other members of the ecosystem. So the different kinds of platforms aid in different ways. You have very little control over what the external platform providers are going to give you. But for developer platforms and business capability platforms, having sustainability as something that you are thinking about is a critical part of your overall sustainability objectives. And we've got many different technology enablers. The Cloud Carbon Footprint, other tools that are coming out of the Green Software Foundation. And if you're not familiar with the Green Software Foundation, I would encourage you to go look at that. They've got lots of resources, training materials, et cetera, to help you think about the sustainability of technology more broadly. I've gotten this far in the talk, but without mentioning AI, but AI in particular for some of this experimentation, some of this scenario planning, scenario generation, that plays an important part. Using things like digital twins as well to model operations more robustly, maybe things that provide a lot of impact to you. And coupled with XR, you might be able to observe things through a simulation that aren't obvious in other ways. And of course, platforms are there to enable it, to enable all of it by moving more and more things into the platform, by using your architectural abilities to embed your commitment to sustainability into your platform. These three aspects of technology work together to support your sustainability objectives. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you so much, Rebecca, and sorry again for the confusion at the beginning of the talk.
Yes, yes.
Well, it happens, I guess. So, at the moment, there are no questions for you, and we're at the end, so I think there won't be any new questions now. So, I guess let's call it a day on stage 2 for now. Thank you again, Rebecca. And it was great having you again as a speaker.